Hello, there, everybody. This is Jay Frost speaking to you from Command Central at the Philanthropy Mastermind series. And of course, today's show, How to Raise, the See It For You accredited series. It's all built around the kinds of questions that you have to do the work that you do. And I'm really happy to have you here today, assuming you're live with us. And if you are, I want to make sure you can participate. So I'm going to tell you all about that in just a second. And if you're watching this recorded later, I hope you'll share this with your colleagues and friends. I know this topic will be important to them. Of course, we'll be talking today about AI-powered fundraising, and more specifically about how artificial intelligence is transforming planned giving. And we have a perfect person to tell you all about that, who I will introduce to you in just a moment. But first, not only do I want to welcome you here, but I want to welcome your involvement in the conversation. I know that our presenter is going to get me involved, so I want you to be involved too, at least to shelter me a little bit from what I don't know or to learn along with me. You can do that by first participating in the chat. And so please do join those who are already there. I hope warming up the space. I'm going to open that up now and see who is there. And that's a perfect place, of course, to just say hello, maybe which part of the country or the world that you're from, maybe which organization you're with. Do go ahead and there and just warm up that space, not only for our presenter who would love to see you here, but also for the others in the community who would like to see you just like you're doing right now. Amy and Pam saying hello. Good to see another Virginian here today. Good to see you too, Peter, in Chile. Wow. Okay. So that's very exciting. And Becky in Jacksonville and Amy right there in Georgia. Aaron in Wisconsin. Good to see you, Tom. Hello there. So it's going to be a lot of fun here in the chat for you to communicate with one another and get to know one another. It's a great place to have that conversation, but there is another place where I hope you'll list your questions, and that's in the Q&A. The reason I say that is I don't want to miss any of your questions or miss sharing them with our presenter today. So please do make sure you make use of both this space you're doing right now so well, thank you, but also the Q&A for your questions, and you can do that throughout. Additionally, we are usually asked about a recording of this and the slide deck. We do make a recording of each of these sessions. Those are posted onto the website of our sponsor for this entire series going back to 2016, and that is DonorSearch. So we won't be talking about them a lot today unless our presenter chooses to mention them for some reason, but it's not any lack of affection. You can find not only all the work that they do, which is so great for the community, for the nonprofit world, at their website at donorsearch.net, but while you're there learning all about your donors, which I hope you'll do, also you can check out the resources tab where there are literally dozens upon dozens of recordings in this series, some of which offer credit, others which offer great conversation and learning, all there for you. So check that out at donorsearch.net. And the slides, I'll ask the presenter about that, whether or not those will be shared with you. You will be receiving an email within the next 48 hours or so with a link to this content, including the recording. So be on the lookout for that. If you don't see it, make sure you check your spam folder. And one last note, which is that you're going to see a little survey at the very end today. If you're here with us live, please fill that out. It will take you no more than 30 seconds. And that is our guide to what we will program next month and all of next year. So please do complete that little survey for us. Now, it's a great pleasure to, of course, introduce or reintroduce to you Brantley Boyette. Brantley is the president of Giving Docs. And if I were to read his whole resume to you, I think it would not only blow your mind, but it would eat up all of his time. But I'll just mention a couple things because there are so many. Senior lecturing fellow at Duke University School of Law, partner at Center for Advanced Hindsight, founder at Shred X Durham, visiting research fellow at Duke University. A long and stellar career in law, which I know also informs his knowledge not only of philanthropy and fundraising, but specifically of planned giving and all the not only mechanisms, but the intricacies of what makes this stuff work. So I am so glad that Brantley can be here today with us to talk about this big field he knows so much about, which is, of course, AI and its confluence with philanthropy and fundraising, and specifically planned giving. Brantley, thank you so much for coming here today.
You're too kind, Jay, and thank you so much for having me. Calling me an expert in AI is very generous. So, as you noted, my background is in law. I founded with another attorney in Austin, Texas, a company called Giving Docs in 2015. Giving Docs is in the online estate planning for philanthropy space. So we specifically are working with plan giving departments at nonprofits around the United States. And you can find out more about that. I'm not going to talk about Giving Docs much today, but you can find out more about that at our website, and I'll drop that in the chat in a little bit. But as a founder and president of a software company, I have been thrust into the world of AI, and I am standing on the shoulders of giants truly when I get to talk about this stuff, or I'm asked to. And I'll be acknowledging some of those as I go through my talk today. But I have a deck I'm going to pull up here and share with you guys. And we'll start there. Um, I think it's important to note at the outset that artificial intelligence is quickly changing the way that we do our jobs, and that applies to every single person probably on this call. And Jay and I were both at the Giving Institute fall board meeting, and for those of you last week in Chicago, for those of you who don't know what the Giving Institute is, it's essentially a group of leaders in the nonprofit consulting and nonprofit tech space that get together to discuss industry trends and share knowledge 3 times a year. And as someone who's been kind of working in the AI space, we don't, at Giving Docs, we haven't productized AI yet, and it remains to be seen how and if we will, but we're certainly using it a lot internally. And what I noted from that group of leaders and was that a lot of the firms really aren't there at the beginner level on the AI journey. And when I talk to nonprofits out in the space, that's also my experience that most of them are still trying to wrap their heads around how to use this. And so most of my talk today is going to be that, like, what is all this stuff? How should we be using it? I'll focus a little bit on the plan giving side, and then try to do some like actual hands-on applications and show you guys how some of these things are working for those of you who don't consider yourself experts. So a fundamental question that we have when we're using AI is, what is AI appropriate problem? So not every challenge suits an AI solution. And an example of something that's not appropriate to use AI for is setting your organization's core values, or creating an organizational mission from scratch, or making ethical decisions about donor acceptance. AI will enthusiastically give you an answer to any of these questions and tell you you are so smart for asking along the way. That doesn't mean that that's what it should be used for. So you have to kind of create your own boundaries, and we'll be going through that a bit later. But where AI has been really helpful as of late is where you're doing work that follows a predictable pattern and it needs to be repeated. So thank you notes or emails at scale, AI can draft that quickly. Categorizing donors, segmenting donors, that's something that AI does very well, and something that AI DonorSearch has been doing very well and for a long time. And then, fast first pass stuff. So creating research, summaries of grants, for example, to be reviewed by humans. So it will create a great first draft and cut out a lot of that busy work. And that's just something you need to be thinking about every day when you're starting to use these tools. So um, we'll start at the beginning. The two types of AI are predictive AI versus generative AI. And we've had predictive AI for a long time. Think predicting the weather. DonorSearch was an early adopter of AI in our field, and they're used it to do predictive analytics and segment donors in a way that was very beneficial for the industry. And others have kind of copied that, and there are other tools that do different things, but that's the big difference. Predictive AI is like analytical patterns, and generative is what you think of as ChatGPT, creating words or things for you to use in your work. In generative AI, I'm going to use ChatGPT today just because that's what we use at Giving Docs, and that's our environment, and that's what we pay for. But my friend Jarian compares it to bottled water. There are a lot of different generative AI tools that you can be using, and they're essentially coalescing, more and more the same every day as they try to copy each other's features, and they're all really good at what they do at this point. But some of them are more specialized for certain tasks. Now, this is the part that's kind of new to my talk, and I want you guys to pay attention here because you're starting to hear this talk of generative AI, workflow AI, agentic AI, which is a hot topic, and then vibe coding. So I kind of want to take some time to explain what these things are because it's going to come up. And I think, something that I experienced in my work was I think it was relatively easy to become a prompt engineer, to get in ChatGPT and ask a question and have it output something, and then you feel like you've won the AI war. You're a champion, and you can conquer all worlds. And then all of a sudden you hear about someone connecting their ChatGPT with their Gmail or their HubSpot, and it's mind blowing and scary, and you kind of put your head in the sand. And I think understanding these different things is super helpful as you're trying to open your mind to using these things in new and creative and imaginative ways. So, workflow AI is something that's integrated into a sequence of actions or tasks. Instead of a human performing each step, the AI can trigger actions when something happens, like, say, a new donation comes in, and you have your payment system, and that triggers an email thank you. And it can move data between tools. So we, for example, as a for-profit business, use HubSpot as our CRM, but you might use Blackbaud or Virtuous or one of the other nonprofit specific CRMs, and it can actually capture that information from that CRM and move it over into ChatGPT to create a new report, and then it can analyze that information and it can start to make decisions for you, and it can assign tasks to humans or systems. So if you're creating a workspace where you are doing everything from ChatGPT, it can actually create tasks in HubSpot or Blackbaud or Virtuous, for example. And then you can set it up to be automated and it completes those tasks automatically. And it turns what used to be your wake up in the morning checklist into semi or fully automated pipeline. So what that looks like, the gratitude email automation that I told you about, AI categorizes the donor, assigns it to the right fundraiser, and drafts a reply for them automatically. For gift acceptance, the AI can gather the data that the donor sends in, fill out the appropriate document or form for your organization, send it out for signature, and put it in the file where it belongs. And then for CRM stuff, a new lead can enter the system. The AI will score that donor, create different tasks based on that donor score, and draft different types of outreach messages for you to review. And if you're comfortable, it might send them. We're not doing that type of thing over here yet, but you can see how that might work. So this is what our chat GPT looks like, and I'm going to get into this in a second and show you more. But there's something for those of you using ChatGPT that we go past workflow AI into agentic AI. And the concept behind this is we're essentially creating a new employee that knows what its job is and does things automatically, pulling data from different areas. Somewhat terrifying, but different orgs are starting to lean into it. And if you give it a goal, it can figure out the steps that it needs to achieve that goal, which means that it can take actions in your tools or software. It could create a new job posting in LinkedIn, for example. It can evaluate the results of those job postings, and if it's not doing a good job, it might change the prompt and try to get better results. And it decides where to look, what criteria to use, and how to write. This is probably scary for some of you, as it was certainly for me when I started playing with it. And going back to, the idea that this is a little bit dangerous. Like we have to be really careful. At Giving Docs, we represent a lot of nonprofits as a partner, and we certainly don't want to take any action which might harm a donor or the reputation of the organization. So there are a lot of safeguards that need to be put in place for people to be using these types of things. But I wanted you guys from a high level to be aware that this is where it's going. Predictive, generative, workflow, agentic. And understanding that fundamentally will help you adapt to new tools as they come out and understanding the tools that you already have. Very, very, very important to understand that as we talk about these tools today, and I show you some things that there's free versus paid. So if you're not paying for the product, you're the product. Really, your information is the product. Any donor information you put in there is the product. You are just handing that over to OpenAI or Google or whoever. You need to be on a paid subscription before you put anything sensitive or confidential into a robot. Very, very important. And the truth is, um, I don't, we can't really know for sure how much we trust these paid services now. They're all so new that if it's really sensitive, you might want to think twice and about how you're going to handle sensitive donor information that you're feeding to these machines. I'm gonna talk really briefly about a group called Fundraising AI. The founders are Nathan Chappell and Mallory Erickson, who I consider dear friends. And if you're going to be using AI in your organization, I encourage you to start here first, or if you haven't seen this, please look at it today. It's a nonprofit itself that's open source, and it outlines guidelines for privacy and security, data ethics, inclusiveness, accountability, transparency, continuous learning, collaboration, legal compliance, social impact, and sustainability. And this group has meetings several times a year. Giving full disclosure, we sponsor this group to help them do their job, but it is really important that we are thinking about this every day as we use AI and how we can be responsible in its use because it is a very powerful and oftentimes dangerous tool. I'm going to pause there and uh, exit out of here and just show you something from last week. So we were at the Giving Institute, we were sitting at a table, and someone asked, do we even have ethical guidelines set up around the use of AI? And the answer was no. And so I was like, oh, I know the answer for this. So we at the Giving Institute want to create a series of ethical guidelines around the use of AI. These guidelines should be true to the mission of the organization and also the organizations which we would encourage to adopt them. So instead of just giving me that, it asked me some questions. So what is the audience here? Should it be for Giving Institute member firms? Should it be for nonprofit organizations generally, donors and foundations? The philanthropic field as a whole. What kind of tone do you want? Do you want it to be principles based? Do you want a practical framework? What actionable standards and examples would you like? If it helps, I can draft a framework organized around key principles. And would you like me to draft the first full version? And I focus on AI in the philanthropic sector, but definitely include ethics. See fundraising.ai for a framework or a way to approach the problem. Number two, this should be for Giving Institute member firms. Tone should be more of a practical framework. And then I created the framework. We haven't implemented it, but it's a pretty good start. And this is something that people would have spent months, just getting a start on, not but 3 years ago. So that is one example of how it's being used. I want to go back to my deck here and get into how we're using it specifically in plan giving. So we've seen plan giving and major giving are especially influenced by these predictive analytic tools. So DonorSearch and others kind of paved the way for people to be able to identify who might be a good plan giving prospect. And having that information is incredibly valuable in a field where fundraisers have limited time. So plan gift officers can't just go out and solicit a gift from everyone when there's three plan gift officers or there's 30 and the list is 1,000 to 1 and you're supposed to have a portfolio of 50. So really identifying who those potential plan giving donors might be, identifying who they might be early so that you can start communicating early on. I mean, the traditional model of plan giving is it's a 3 to 5 years sales cycle essentially to close a planned gift, made worse by the fact that the average life of a plan giving officer at an organization is 18 months. So knowing who the right people to be talking to is incredibly important, and being able to segment and figure out what the right message to the right person is has been transformative for our industry, because in the past, a lot of it was throwing darts. And the outcome was that even still today, we only know about 30% of the planned gifts that come in the door across the industry. So for all that work that our industry is doing, 70% of the gifts that come through to the organizations weren't known to the organization before the donor died. So we at Giving Docs are working to change that, and I know a lot of people in the field are working to flip that number on its head. But finding the right people to talk to has been transformative, frankly. Something that we can do now that we haven't been able to do before in Plan Giving is personalized communication at scale. So this is where we start to get into the questions of our boundaries, but there are tools out there where we can draft personalized emails to 100 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people, and it takes minutes. And we know from CRMs who these people are, when they've been donating, when their birthday is. And this is why you need an ethical framework at your organization, because if you're not using tools like this, other organizations will be. And in many cases, you're competing for the same donors. So having AI give you a leg up in this respect in terms of communicating with donors is very important. I think the groups that are doing this ethically force you as a gift officer to check every single email for accuracy to make sure it sounds like you. But it's just gotten a lot easier to do a lot of the work that took us a lot of time in the past. And I'm going to get more into that later. But one of the other ways that AI is really helpful in plan giving is this gift optimization and donor journey mapping. So chat does this really well right now. There's a couple people that have started to productize this. But essentially, if we have predictive analytics and we have donor identification and we know what messaging they like, we start to know what kind of gift they might want to leave the organization. And plan gifts come in many forms outside of bequests, and there are many current gifts that fall under the purview of a plan gift officer or plan gift director. And knowing the right questions to ask based on this person's history to get them to the right type of gift quicker is incredibly valuable to the organization, and something that often took a lot of in-person meetings to suss out, and still maybe will, but getting people to know what to say and what to ask at the right time is incredibly helpful for gift officers. And then the other really valuable piece is on the reporting side. So you can drop spreadsheets into ChatGPT, tell it what you want, and it's pretty good at reporting. And there are a bunch of apps like that now that can do reporting and then also help you create a framework for your strategy. And I'm not saying you should hand over strategy for your org to the robots, but it's doing pretty good work on that front. And there are other tools where you can take your chat GPT output and put it into something like Gamma. And I know I'm saying a lot of tools right now, and I'll include them in the chat or in the follow-up to this. But a tool like Gamma can take conversation, it can take a transcript from a call and spit out a report, essentially. And sending that back potentially to a donor or to your boss is incredibly valuable. And once again, the type of thing that people used to spend many hours on and now can be done very simply if you have tools that you know how to use and that you trust and that fit within your organization's framework and standards for the use of AI. I know that some of the shops that we work with don't even allow anyone to use AI yet. So I'm going to take us out of the deck here for a minute and show you what I think this was done a year and a half ago, 2 years, and I still think it's the best like practical hands-on guide for the use of AI in plan giving to get you started. And give me, oh, nope, not there yet. This is a guide done by my dear friend Sharon Koshi, who is a luminary in the space on the subject of AI and fundraising. And essentially, you'll have this, and we won't have time to go through the whole thing today and do all the things. But the exercise one is creating a brand voice prompt. So you get in a chat, you get in a Claude, you get whatever tool you're using, and you name your organization, you put in a mission statement for the org, pull it off your website. Primary donor demographics that as you know them to be true, and then 3 to 5 values, and it will create your brand voice. And then it can speak in that from there on. So you've created the brand voice and you've given the voice to this agent, and it knows how to speak. The next exercise is crafting a donor persona. So these things make really good donor personas if you just give them a name, age range, professional background, giving capacity, motivations for giving, and it'll create all kinds of crazy facts about this person that doesn't exist. And this is, of course, really good for practicing how to talk to donors, identifying what types of gifts they might be interested in leaving. It can score donors even without some of these tools that are better. If you can't afford a donor search, some of these tools do an okay job at helping you refine your list. And uh, that is something that was not previously available. The personalized outreach we already talked about. Creating a custom GPT. So this will tell you how to do that, how to create a custom GPT with your brand voice. And now that you have given it all this information, it knows how to speak to you or speak to donors if that's what you're asking it to do. It can create marketing assets. We partner with a lot of the plan giving marketing companies at Giving Docs, and we certainly don't think there's a replacement for the great work that they do and the consulting work that they do and the value of having an expert by your side. But if you don't have budget for that, it can write decent copy. And certainly we've used it to draft new copy for the work that we do, always with the use of humans, always bringing in experts. But you can guide it on how to do this, and it does a serviceable job if you don't have those other options. And then it can create tailored plan giving offers. So I talked about this a little before, but if it knows the person, it knows the organization, and it knows what you're looking for, and it knows the different types of gifts, which it does now. It didn't used to, but now it's very familiar with all the different types of plan giving vehicles and when they might be applicable to a certain donor. Then it can write the right message to try to get that type of gift across the finish line. And that is a revelation for some people. So I encourage you all to actually go through this workshop and do it when I'm done here. We don't have quite the time for it here today, but I think it's a super valuable exercise for you guys to undertake when we're done here. So back to the slideshow. There was a study done actually 2 years in a row now by Charing Koshi, who I just referenced, and Nathan Chappell, formerly at DonorSearch for a long time. He led initiatives in AI for years, and he is also a luminary. He's also one of the founders of Fundraising.ai, which I talked about earlier. And all of these resources are free to you guys to use. This is this year's research findings. So these are very important things to kind of keep in the back of your mind. Last year, less donors said they were familiar. I think it was in the 70s. This year, 86% of donors say they are familiar with artificial intelligence. This year, 61% think that it significantly will improve the effectiveness of the work that you do. So donors know about this, and they think it might make you better at your job or able to make you do better work or whatever that means to donors. But they are concerned, and they are most concerned about their privacy and data security being compromised. And they are second most concerned about the potential for bias in AI decision making. About 49% are concerned that they're going to lose human touch. They 33% are concerned that nonprofits are spending too much money on AI in implementing it. And then 30%, sadly, their least concern is for you and your job. So I'm not, making a judgment about this. They just did this survey and it happened. And so it's good to know what donors are concerned about when you're having your real life conversations with them. so that you can try to allay some of these concerns around privacy and data security first and foremost, which once again goes back to have a policy in place about this and know the tools that you're working with. I'm going to touch on some of the tools that people are using for AI now, and um, obviously, DonorSearch, who hosts these amazing events, has been doing this for a long time, and I think the tools that they provide are excellent. I think, full disclosure, I'm kind of friends with all these guys. So, Momentum is a company that actually started out of the same behavioral science lab at Duke where I came to study, and they use predictive AI to figure out who to communicate with and when. And they're one of those companies that will draft messages to donors and then require you to check a box that you've actually read the whole message before you send it out. Dataro is also in the kind of like the identification predictive space out of Australia. They're doing interesting things there as well. Nonprofit OS was like the OG chat GPT for nonprofits, and that was started by Cherry and Koshi, and it's now wrapped into Kindsight. So before ChatGPT was even a thing, Cherian brought this thing to me, and it was essentially prompts for fundraisers, and he had hundreds of them, and it blew my mind. And then that quickly, everybody caught up within a year, but it was just cool to see it grow. Avid AI, which is also doing cool things in the space to connect all your systems together and give you kind of instant reporting and also create things. And those guys are growing really quick. That might be a good one to look at. I didn't mention Blackbot, who's also a Giving Docs partner. I just went to their BBCon a month ago, and I had to give up my phone so I could go in the booth and talk to the virtual gift officer. And I will tell you, talking to the screen, it wasn't perfect, but it was pretty good. And that should terrify all of us. Um, the guys at Charitable Solutions are doing something similar. Givesy is doing something similar with these virtual avatars. And someone I trust recently, who is an expert in the space, said in a year from now, we could be having this conversation over Zoom and you won't be really sure if it's me. And the worst part about that is my immediate thought was not that it wouldn't happen. My immediate thought was that, oh, I've got more time than that. So that is kind of the pace that things are moving in this space. And it's terrifying, and you just need to be out ahead of it. And we'll talk more about that in a second here. I want to touch on like kind of the next frontier, which isn't really workflow AI, it isn't agentic, but it's vibe coding, and I have a feeling like that's where this is all headed. That we've essentially been taught to prompt now, and we will be prompting everything for the rest of our lives. And the difficult things like connecting things and working between these apps will start to disappear into our periphery, and we'll just tell the machines what we want and we'll get them. So I recently got really fascinated by vibe coding, and I did something that was completely unrelated to fundraising, but I signed up for a subscription service called Base 44, which is a company out of Israel. It was one person developer shop that recently sold for $100 million. And he figured out how to make websites, apps essentially, from prompting. And so I woke up on a Sunday morning and I wanted to make a detective mystery solving website. And I said, I want you to build an app for iPhone and Android called Gumshoe. This will be an app that is built as the world's greatest detective, and it will cost $1 per month as a subscription service. The theme of the app will be that of old Hollywood mysteries, and it will have the same aloof character traits of Elliot Gould in The Long Goodbye. That's a deep cut for you detective film lovers. Thematically, it will have a playful take on old Hollywood noir. The point of this app is to answer questions about users' deepest mysteries or find a way to approach the truth about these mysteries. It will lean heavily on the problem-solving fundamentals of Sherlock Holmes, Philip Marlowe, Matlock, and many other mystery-solving characters throughout popular literature and film. It will also lean heavily on the behavioral science principles espoused by Dan Ariely and Richard Taylor to find the most likely outcome to each question. It should be slightly cheeky but deeply respectful and careful to protect its users' emotions. It should report on its own success in regards to solving users' mysteries monthly and always strive to be a better version of itself. So this didn't like immediately pop up, but it asked me some questions. Um, I said yes. It started writing. We went through some things. Eventually, it got stuck. I took this whole thread over to ChatGPT and said, "Hey, ChatGPT, I'm trying to do this in base 44." ChatGPT spit out, "Put this in your base 44 prompt, and you'll be able to get this done." And then it created, the entire app, and it's functional and it works. It created fake reviews. It stole and strip mined IP from some of the greatest authors about detectives and also some of my most respected behavioral scientists that I work with. And of course, I am not selling this for $1 a month, but I wanted to see what it would do and whether there would be any safeguards in place. And there weren't. So, with that, I'm going to invite my friend Jay back, and we are going to build a philanthropy masterminds app
Oh man.
that's
Okay, I'm definitely charging more than $1 though. Yeah, yeah.
okay, but we can charge whatever you want, but it'll tell you if you're wrong about how to maximize profitability.
All right. So
So
where do we start?
I want to create an app for philanthropy masterminds series hosted by Jay Frost. This
So
app,
next month we won't know whether it's me or not. That's the bottom line here.
pretty much, yeah, we're creating a robot Jay. So this app should send its users daily nuggets of wisdom from all of Jay's guests over the past 16 years,
10 years.
10
10
years.
years.
Uh, we want these messages to be delivered over email or text, depending on the user's preference. Set a price that you think would get the most. And it'll go for a minute here. And oh, I meant to do this. I was gonna strip mine
Oh,
your stuff.
yeah. I'm sure you can, yes, and you can adjust. They don't ask for information on audience, or rather, we didn't provide information on audience. Maybe,
Yeah, they will. It'll ask follow-up
right,
questions. So you just dump everything in there, and then sooner or later, it will spit you out a functioning website with payment options and tell you how to set up your own Stripe account. And this is terrifying because Giving Docs took years to build.
right.
And um, I think at this point in time, it might take a month to rebuild the whole thing from scratch. And that's everybody right now is trying to figure out how to hold on to their brand. And this applies to nonprofits. Like a nonprofit that is doing well can now have their IP stripped and taken to a competitor. And so what are we doing to protect that information? I'm going to talk a little bit more and we'll see what it spits out here. But you can stay, Jay, because I might bounce some of these things off you. We need to talk about what are our boundaries. And someone put it to me, I was like mind blown when I heard this morning, but I was like, what a good question for all of us. At what age do we let children know these tools? And it gets you thinking about like how dangerous they are because we think of them as like, oh, this is fun and safe and easy. And like, what are the dangers, Facebook has come into the news about this recently about how they're building things that potentially hurt children. And at what point does our work and interaction with these things potentially hurt children? And that should be a big red line for anyone that's using any of these tools. At what point does a generated thank you note become dangerous to your organization? Everybody uses thank you notes as the example that oh, I hate thank you notes. They take me so much time. At what point is that unethical? Like, at what point does a donor sniff that and say, you know what, never mind. I'd prefer to give my gift to the other org that actually still wants to communicate with me. To what degree are we stifling our own creativity and critical thinking by always relying on these tools? That is something that I struggle with every day because I've been using it more and more, and teams been using it more and more. And I like to think of myself as a critical thinker and a strategist. But when I've presented things that have stumped me, it's given me good ideas, I think, which leads to the last question, how do we determine what good looks like anymore when we're using these tools? So, if you have any thoughts on this, Jay, I'd love to hear them. And then that's kind of the end. I'm welcome to open it up to Q&A, and I'll just leave this up.
Sure. Well, in fact, there was a question in here. I don't know if you want to take this now or not, but it does get at the heart of that from Peter in the chat that talks about how we potentially combat donor fatigue with a lack of personalization that might come from automation. That's kind of embedded in this, the dangers, not just the danger that a child uses it and then we don't know what's going through their mind, but also just what happens when people feel like they're just having conversations with robots.
Peter, I think that's an existential question for all of us right now, as the, the AI has become part of humanity and it will become embedded in our conversations. We have meta glasses, which someone texts you and you immediately have a response to the text and it knows the answer, and so you reply. Like, I don't know what the answer is. It's existential, and we have to take care to make sure that we are interacting our person, our humanity, our curiosity into these things. And that actually gets to the one more slide that I forgot about, which was some things that Nathan Chappelle said last week.
Hmm.
And these are not my quotes, but they are brilliant. The real superhuman, the real superpower humans bring to the world in this moment is not a technical skill, it is curiosity. AI can process data, it can generate insights, it can create beautiful things. It cannot wonder. And a culture of curiosity does not appear out of thin air. It's designed, it's modeled, and it's encouraged within your organization.
And that curiosity piece also, I think of that in the same breath with the creativity part that you had in the last slide.
You hear
Because
that
if the
noise? Something happened. Let's see what it spit out. And I agree, Jay. Uh, Yep. So here's a daily dose of your fundraising wisdom. Nuggets received, delivery method, total library, today's wisdom. It essentially, created this, and then you can update it for color or messaging or what have you. Uh, it says you're $10 a month, so congratulations on that. That is going to be your retirement, Jay.
Well, I was just going through the counts today, and I think we have 780 different programs somewhere around there that we've done. So another part of this has to do with what information is utilized in the app that's built. So in theory, I guess you could dump all 780 programs in here, all the content, and then
Correct.
it would just be spitting out what it thought was the most relevant.
That's where I was getting to. So obviously we didn't have time to do that, but yes, you can do that. You would, you might owe licensing fees or to 780 people, or everything's free now and nothing's worth anything. I'm not sure. But what is clear at this point that at least this administration has is not going to regulate this. So I can strip authors openly at this point, and there's nothing in this app to stop me. I could have created this with your stuff and it wouldn't stop me. You might sue me, but like the AI is not going to regulate your work.
Right. And that's maybe another good question here, and you may get into that later, Brantley, but um, just because the app lets you do it, one part is the ethical question about should you, but then the legal part, which I know you have a lot of expertise with, experience with, is whether or not you would expose yourself, or in this case, our organizations would expose themselves to some legal liability just because the government isn't regulating and just because the app isn't regulating doesn't mean that somebody won't come out of the woodwork and say, you stole my stuff.
Yeah, there's still an ocean of litigation out there,
Right, with
and
the authors. Yeah.
it's just at the beginning of it. So essentially, what OpenAI and all the rest have done is strip mine everything that ever existed. And there's a real open, and I think the authors um, should win eventually, but this will take a lot of time and cost a lot of money in getting their licensing back. And then how do you even parse it up when it's been made into this soup that it's just kind of the legal question of our time, actually.
And would an organization confronted with that kind of legal challenge be at greater risk than OpenAI because they have billions of dollars and presumably lots of legal experience? So,
I mean, they could, I think organization and nonprofits more likely to get a C&D, than actually like damage, lawsuit type thing. So C&D is cease and desist for those of you not familiar. And I just don't think you're going to be joined as a defendant unless you're flagrant and open about stealing someone's stuff. You can take it down, which the robots have been flagrant and open about using everyone's stuff. So we will see, but I think the litigation in that respect is far from over.
so this is very cool. So what are some of the ways that you can imagine, let's say, a not-for-profit using this to design a new app that delivers its services more streamlined to their customers or their service? Uh,
Yeah, potentially. Like it's limitless, and if anyone has an idea in the chat, it's so as of right now, this is what it will do. Will give you a really awesome first version, and then I told you I had to like it started to hallucinate a little bit, and I took it over to chat, and it's like, no, here's the code that base 44 wants to see. Um, what most of these apps do right now in their current state is give you a really awesome first version. And then the more you feed it, the more it starts to do illusions and uh, it gets worse. And the development world, like we have a CTO, probably most of these orgs have some type of CTO who handles the coding for the org. Developers are using this stuff, but in a different way. Like if I just asked my CTO to add philanthropy masterminds to the Giving Ducks platform, he'd be like, no, no, Brantley, that's not how it works. Like one thing is very clean and one is very messy. And it's this, the new stuff, and it's not necessarily coded to speak with whatever systems you're using. But that said, I think that's all going to start to coalesce and essentially being able to prompt all of that.
Very cool.
I put my email up here in case anyone wants to follow up. I love talking about this. I love it when people call me and just ask questions. I'm not an expert, but I am seeking the truth, and I am hopeful that this sparks some imagination, some serious conversations in your organizations, and that you get some ideas about how to do your job in fun and creative ways.
And I'll just go ahead and take the liberty of reading that in case someone's hearing this as opposed to looking at it, which is Brantley, that's Brantley at givingdocs.com, or the URL, which is givingdocs.com, of course. Thank you very much for that. And I know we have some questions coming in, Brantley, if you want to
Yeah, I'm here.
close the
Yep.
deck, maybe, and then we can see you.
Sure.
Um, but the first of which is, I know someone asked this much earlier, is can you make these slides available? Can we share them with the audience?
Yeah, of
Okay, great. If you can send those to us, then we'll include them in
course.
our email out to folks. But I want to encourage people to also be able to reach out to you as well. So just because you'll be getting this doesn't mean you'll get what Brantley is thinking about tomorrow. So both those things have value, and
Very true.
make sure that you are in touch and following his work. We had a question from Tom here. It came in just a few minutes ago, saying historians have ways to discern if copy is primary and copy which is secondary. So how can one tell if the copy they're reading is AI generated or not?
I mean, we've seen this already in schools. So, there's tools out there to tell you whether someone's essay has been AI generated, and they're not very good and they're getting worse. So, I think that is a question that remains a little bit unanswered because people, as soon as this came out, people made it their business and their mission to do that, and then the AI made it its business to beat them.
Right, right. Oh, Melissa, just in case you missed this comment earlier, the email that will come to you if you're here with us live, which you are, will include a link to this recording as well as to the slides. And for those who are watching the recording, you'll just need to check out the DonorSearch site at donorsearch.net under the resources tab for the recording, or you can look at their YouTube channel, which has hundreds of these things. So do check those out. I know that this issue of creativity, which you mentioned before, and then it's being mentioned right now, you're talking about the context of students, and you mentioned critical thinking, which is another aspect of that. I'm wondering how this impacts maybe uh, if you've seen indications that the way that the content is generated is more or less likely to impact giving levels. I don't know what data there is to even draw a conclusion there, but one of the things we're battling with at the Giving Institute and elsewhere is just this matter of declining interest in giving, or declining engagement with giving, I should probably say. We don't know what the interest level is. We just know that fewer people are giving. We're seeing more money, but that's largely because a very thin layer of people who have a lot of resources are giving more money. But the rest of us, it's a declining population. So in my career timeline, it's gone from 75% of the marketplace to under 49.6% of the population that's giving. What are your thoughts, or what kind of data are you seeing to indicate that these approaches might be more or less helpful in engaging more people?
I think that 49.6% number is challenging for a number of reasons. And that's been affectionately referred to as the generosity crisis, I believe. And one of the reasons is it doesn't take into account, from what I understand, the crowdfunding movement. So that has taken a lot of like individual giving where people are like, oh, I can spot give to something in my community that I really care about or something that made me feel something really strongly. And I think we could take lessons from that actually. Like that is a content driven form, pure raw content that AI could potentially help traditional nonprofit fundraising with in ways that, they haven't, maybe don't have the resources. I think it's also impacted by real income. So that wealth tightening at the top, and, we haven't had minimum wage increase for real in 30 years, whatever it is. So I don't know that it's necessarily that we're doing anything wrong on the nonprofit side, but I do think that these tools could help us be more efficient, like those tools like GoFundMe that are just purely efficient. And so it's not that easy to say nonprofits have done something wrong or they're not keeping up with the times when you have these big external factors like that.
Great to see a note from one of my favorite people there in the chat, with a shout out to you saying for real, which I, I agree with completely. While you were talking, Brantley, I want to point out, and people can see this if they're following the chat, that Fireflies generated a summary of this meeting. It did for me, and then it did for someone else, which they shared with the group. Sometimes those things are really instructive. Sometimes they're pretty banal and not very illustrative of what we've been going through. But it does mean that these things are completely integrated. And you talked about that earlier. So when you were talking about agentic earlier in the presentation, you were helping us to understand how we move from this world of generative into, all the way through to agentic. But are we going to see that for the most part by trying to deploy tools like the one you were having us play with a minute ago? Or is that just going to be there, sort of the way Fireflies is?
Yeah, I think, we had this talk at the Fundraising AI meetup, and I can't remember where we were. It was Breakfast Bridge, I think. And we were trying to figure out what things are going to look like. Like, what does a CRM look like in 18 months? And nobody could really put their finger on it. But yeah, like I think an agent, what do you we can call it, a personal assistant or, you know, a virtual CMO or what have you, like will just exist and we won't have to work or really understand things so well. We'll just say, I would like to have this agent that does this, and then it happens, and all the other things are immediately integrated. And I think that's coming. I don't know how long it's going to be.
All the way through to the virtual development officer you were describing. Yeah,
I mean, people are pushing for it.
right. Wow. Thank you for all of this. This was really awesome. I'm going to ask you the question I ask everybody at these things. It's very helpful. If you were to summarize all this and just think about the one thing people can do to get started on understanding this and applying it in their own shop, because some places are big and some are small. Some people have technical proficiency and some do not, the budgets or don't. What's the one thing that could get people started on understanding this path you've taken us on?
I mean, prompt, 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 prompt all day. Spend hours prompting. Ask the questions. Talk about with chat. Like, what about this? What about it secure? How do I make this safe for my organization? How do I create rules for the organization? How do I take this to leadership? Like, it really gets you to a good starting place. And I think that was where I fell short as a leader for a while, where I was like, got in there and I asked the question. I was like, oh, I did something cool, but I didn't ask the next question. I took that thing and I didn't ask, like, what are the implications of this? What are the ethical implications? What are the implications for my business? How do I get my employees to adopt this? How do I get my partners to understand what we're doing? And I think while you, once again, shouldn't give you all the answers and you should have boundaries there, it'll get you thinking in ways that you might not have otherwise. And I think a lot of us, and I've seen this within my org, other orgs, are see something neat and shiny, and then they want to go back to the way they were doing things and without taking it to the next level. And I'm not saying we should spend all day on that. I'll leave you with this. The fear of AI is that it's going to take all of our jobs away. The promise of AI is that it allows us to build stronger relationships and spend more time doing that.
Thank you, Brantley. Really appreciate it. If you had a question out there and we didn't have a chance to get to it because it's at 1:59 on my clock here, then I hope you will reach out to Brantley and do take a look for that email that's going to come to you with a recording link as well as a link to this deck. And you can also find him and his work all around the country. So I don't know where you're going to be next, but I'm sure we can find you at one of those meetings very soon. Thank you, Brantley. Really
Thank you
appreciate it.
so much, Jay, and thank you everyone for joining.
And everybody do fill out your survey. It will really help us as we take all that data, load it through our own AI here to figure out what you want to see in here next year. So do fill it out. It only takes you 30 seconds, but it means a whole year of programming for you. Thanks so much. We'll look forward to seeing you next time. Take care, everybody.